Welcome to this episode of the Experience Project. This one is all about sleeping systems. So your sleeping bag, quilt, sleeping pad, pillow, and then other things to consider when you're out there in the mountains. I'm going to start with the most important aspect of the whole system, and that is your pad. So much time is spent about talking about the sleeping bag rating, and not enough time is spent talking about the R value of the sleeping pad that you're on. The R value of the pad, to me, is more important than the rating of the sleeping bag. The ground is what is actually causing the convection heat loss, right? It's sucking the hot air out of you, the cold air comes up from the bottom. If you're ever cold, it's generally from below you, not above you. In the last handful of years, sleeping pad companies have started using a standardized way to assess R value, and it's the ASTM method that you can look up. And basically, if you're looking at sleeping pads and you're comparing one to the next, if a company isn't listing that certified R value, then I would immediately just throw it out, because you're not going to have any real information on what to base your decision off of. As a general rule on pads, I'd like to stay 4+ for your 3-season, kind of September, October temps, 25, maybe 20 at the low end to warmer. If you're getting into the really cold stuff, so 0 to 15, 20 degrees, then you jump up to something like this, which is the Thermarest X-Therm. This is going to have like an R value of 8+. So you really got kind of your 3-season stuff's going to be in that 3.5 to 4.5 range. And then when you get to the 7, 8, and plus R values, that's going to be better for the real cold temps. Now, I think someone would say, well, why don't I just get a high R value to have all the time? If I take this pad out, and I've done it, if it's a warm September night, if the low is 45 degrees, I'll literally be in my underwear on top of the pad, just sweating. The amount of heat that is generated off this, that reflects your body heat back up, is tremendous. So it's too much of a pad for the warm September nights, potentially October nights. Up in Alaska for our first hunt, certainly I'm going to be using a lower R value pad. By the time we get to our mountain goat hunt in mid to late October, potential hunt in snow, then that's when I would change to something like the X-Therm. You could really probably, instead of having, if you're hunting a lot of different seasons, you could have one quilt with, say, so this is a Katabatic 22-degree Alsec quilt. I could take that one quilt, and then to adjust for temperature time during the time of the year, just have 2 different pads, one for mild weather and then the higher R value for cold weather. As far as pads themselves, there's not a lot to it. You're looking for, essentially, you need to go buy some, and I just recommend sleeping on the floor in your house, test them out. Don't figure out that you don't like the pad on a backcountry hunt. Do this at home if you're having a miserable night's sleep, your bed is 10 feet away and you can jump in it and get a good night's sleep, and then realize that you need to change something before you ever take this on a hunt. I did this a couple years ago. I did a bunch of tests. My wife thought I was crazy, slept on the floor for like 2 weeks. One note on that, all the testing I did was on carpet. I think you need to do that like on hardwood floors. So go sleep in your kitchen or bathroom or wherever you've got hard floors, because that's more indicative of what it's going to feel like when you're out there in the mountains. Pad thickness, you would think thicker is better. Sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not. I've got another pad here I'll show you that's thinner, that's the most comfortable pad I've ever slept on. It's just heavy. So you just need to go and experience it, how the pad's constructed, the internal baffles, how much like structure it has, all dictate like how comfortable it's going to be for you, and whether you're, I sleep on my side, on my stomach, on my back, on my other side. I'm tossing and turning all night long. And I really just need a pad that kind of does everything well. If you're just someone who lays on your back and falls asleep, then structure isn't as important, because you're not on your side with like more pressure points at your hip and things like that. The valve that you inflate with is something that's really nice when they work well. The original Thermarest prior to this generation was a really slow valve. So you open it up and you have to squeeze all the air out of there and take forever. Most quality pads now have good valves where you can just flip this lever, and then I twist that open, and within 15 to 30 seconds tops, all the air's out of it. Other ones, the Sea to Summit one I have down here has got a big rubber valve that just all the air dumps out really easily. And then you can adjust pressure as well, which is nice. So at my go-to method for finding the right pressure of the pad. For years, I would just do this. I would inflate it to as full as possible and thought that was good. For maximum R value, that is what you want to do, but not, you got to balance that with the actual comfort of sleeping on the pad. So what I do is I blow it up kind of firm, lay on my side, and then I'll have the valve and I'll just start taking air out of it until like a slight bounce of my hip and I feel my hip touch the ground. And that usually is about perfect with these thermarest pads. Every pad's gonna be a little different. Again, just figure this stuff out at home. Don't wait until you get up in the mountains and you've never slept on the pad and you're gonna find out that you sleep miserable. Most pads come in quite a few different sizes. I tend to just go with the standard. So this is 20 inches wide. It's got a slight mummy shape to it, so it tapers as it goes down to the end. 72 inches long. I'm 5'11", 190 pounds. If you're 6'3", 220, you're gonna want a wide and a long pad. So usually wide is 25 inches, and then it goes to like 78 inches in the length of the pad. Just find what works for you. Again, everything's weight, so you got these pros and cons you got to juggle as far as the weight of the pad and what you want. As far as overall weight, I think 1 pound, there's a lot of good pads on the market nowadays that are right around that 1 pound, 16 ounce mark, right? I believe this X-Therm is right at 16 ounces. The lighter, just regular Neo Air I have is 12.5 ounces. So you should be able to stay a pound or below and still get a really good pad. As far as patching, taking care in the field, I've had very few issues with my pads. I'm pretty good about, once I select where I'm gonna pitch my tent or throw my bivy sack out, just get down on the ground and I'll just take my hand and rub it over the dirt where the pad's roughly gonna sit. Find any sharp rocks, any sharp sticks. It takes 30, 45 seconds to do this. I've had 2 or 3 times in the last 15 years where I've had a leak in my pad from something that I slept on that caused a pop. So it's really been a non-issue. Obviously, you want to make sure you got repair patch kits. Most of Thermarest does a good job of sending a patch kit with them. A product called AquaSeal is absolutely amazing for when you get back home. One thing I found, I'll actually just show it to you now. This is that Sea to Summit. It's called the Comfort Plus pad. This thing's incredible to sleep on. It's my favorite pad by far. It's just really heavy. I believe it weighs 28 ounces. So it's almost full 1 pound, 2 ounces heavier than my Thermarest pads. But I did have a slow leak on it. And you can see where I got this, that's AquaSeal after it's all dried up. What you can do is take any kind of water spray bottle, put soapy water in there, inflate the pad with as much air pressure as you can get, and then just spray the bottle over the pad. And wherever it's leaking, a little bubble is gonna just pop up and just keep popping up, and that's gonna tell you where the leaks are. It's the best way I've figured out how to find a leak once you get back home. In the field, you're not gonna have that option. So the best method I found there, inflate it really good, put your ear next to the pad and just hover around until you hear the kind of hissing of the air escaping. But the AquaSeal product really is just fantastic. It's super flexible, seals up really well. I've repaired so many things from waders to sleeping pads to tents, lots of different things with that AquaSeal product. This Sea to Summit pad, again, is a good example. It's the most comfortable pad I've ever slept on. It's thinner. It's only, I believe it's less than 2 inches thick. And it's got all these different kind of offsetting air pockets here, which make it really, really comfortable. Has a great valve. It actually has a 2-way valve on it. One, pop this one open and you can release air pressure by pushing down on that, which is really nice. And to deflate it, you just pop that open and all the air's gone. This one's fairly unique in that it has 2 chambers. There's one on the bottom and then one on the top. So if one were to get a flat, you still have a second chamber that's holding air. Pretty cool, but that's one of the reasons why this is so heavy. Also so dang comfortable. So I'll take this on certain trips where I'm not worried about weight or sleep is sleep is always a priority, but it's so dang heavy that I haven't packed it in quite a few years, frankly. One other thing with air pads is obviously inflating the pad, getting the air in them. It's half joking but half serious. If blowing up your pad is so difficult for you to do that you need a pump or a sack or something to do, just stay home. It takes 18 breaths for me to blow this up. You get lightheaded for a few seconds. I just think it's, when we're backpacking, you know, you have to be mindful of how much stuff you're packing with you, whether, even if it's not just the weight penalty, even if a pump weighs an ounce or 2 ounces, it's something you have to keep track of. It's something it's something else on your gear list you got to pack. Where did I put it in my backpack as I'm setting up camp that night? Did I pack it up that morning? There's a mental tax to everything that we take with us on a hunt, and that's why I always err on simpler, less. And if it means I gotta be lightheaded for a few seconds after 18 whopping breaths, big deal. So to me, it's just my personal opinion. I just think it's really ridiculous when people, you know, get so hung up on how do they inflate an air mattress. So moving on to sleeping bags and or quilts. I've got a super light Enlightened Equipment quilt here that weighs, I believe, 17 ounces. This is a Katabatic Alsec 22 that I believe weighs 23.5 ounces. And this is Justin, cameraman behind us here, his Western Mountaineering bag that's he couldn't remember if it was 25 or 30 degree bag, but it weighs just under 2 pounds. So right around 30, 31 ounces. Kind of the same with inflating the pad. If you're in the market for something new, if you're ready to upgrade, I strongly encourage you to look at quilts. They're more versatile, they're lighter for the weight. The only downside is the pad attachment system. You got to be mindful of that, which, you know, to my point a second ago about packing a pump, it is something extra you got to pack. But I think the pros on this outweigh any of the cons, in my opinion. They're just absolutely fantastic. If you're not familiar with quilts, you've got these ones have a sewn foot box, and then the whole back of the quilt is just open. So this is attaching with these attachment points to the pad, and then your back or whatever is just sleeping directly on the sleeping pad, versus obviously a sleeping bag, you're gonna have all this fabric, all this insulation, which is really doing nothing when you're compressing it completely flat under the weight of your body, sandwiching it in between your body and the pad. It's providing next to zero R value. So everything that you're compressing is just weight, materials that you packed up into the mountains for no reason. I mean, they've got the simplicity factor going for them. You just slide in, but again, it's extra weight. You're 6 to 10 ounces if you kind of go apples to apples on a lightweight sleeping bag versus a lightweight quilt. That to me, quilts are just a no-brainer. Again, you don't got to go out and buy one tomorrow if you've got a great sleeping bag. Justin's got these Western Mountaineering bags are of the highest quality. They're fantastic. Just when you're ready to upgrade, I strongly encourage you to look at quilts. To talk about insulation here for a minute, essentially you've got kind of two different categories. You've got down, and then you've got synthetic. Synthetic to me is really, from our perspective, lightweight backpacking, not something you need to be concerned with. They're going to be a lot heavier. To get the same warmth ratio, they're going to be a lot heavier, and they're not going to compress as much. They're going to be 2 or 3 times the size trying to stuff into your backpack. Within down, you've got different ratings, different fill ratings from 650, 750, 800, 850, 900, 950 fill. What that means is it's basically inferring the quality and loftness of the down. So if I take 4 ounces of a 650 fill down and I drop it into this cylinder, it's going to fill up to, say, 12 inches tall. I'm making up numbers here. I take 4 ounces of a 950 fill down, it's going to fill up to 18 inches tall. So that same amount, the same weight of down is going to create more loft. Loft is what creates the warmth, right? Like, this down in itself is not warm. It's creating an air gap between your body and the outside air. So a colder sleeping bag is not only going to have more down in it, but it's going to have more larger baffles, larger chambers inside there to basically fill up that air gap. So it's, you know, I want to say these 30-degree quilts are like around 2 1/4 inches of baffle. So how they actually construct the baffle in there is 2 1/4 inches thick, and then you get up to, like, you drop down to around 20 degrees, it goes to 2.5 to maybe 3 inches thick of the amount of loft. So again, just creating that air gap between your body and the outside air. And the down is just filling up those chambers to basically help insulate you from the outside. Within the quality of downs, there's a kind of a newer down called DWR, water repellent. The stuff's pretty incredible, really. This quilt in particular, I had ordered it even lighter at one point, and I wanted to make it warmer, so I bought some water repellent down that literally came in like a Ziploc bag, and I took it out of the bag, and it's everywhere. It's making a mess in my garage. So I came up with a brilliant idea to get it saturated, and then once it's wet, I was just going to put the clumps into the different baffle chambers here, and then I'll sew it back up. And I couldn't get them wet. Like I would literally put them a 5-gallon bucket, grab a clump it down, put it down in the water, I'd pull it back out, and it was just completely dry. So it's really incredible stuff, what it does. It will eventually saturate. All DWRs break down over time. It's not a waterproof barrier, it's just a water resistant barrier, but it definitely gives you a good leg up in making down, hold its loft longer throughout a hunt, throughout a wet hunt. Or if it does happen to get wet, you could shake it off, and it's not going to be soaking wet immediately. It's going to shed most of that water. Another thing to think about is just washing your down stuff. Definitely sleeping bags. I think it's something you could easily forget, where you go a couple years without washing it. Kind of roughly threw out a number of like every 30 days in the field, it's worth washing your down sleeping bags. So there's down soap that you put, laundry detergent that you're gonna wash it with, and then to dry it, you put it in a tumble dryer, you put it on the super low or no heat, let it dry, and then I'll let it get most of the way dry, and you'll find there's kind of like clumps of down in there. I'll get in there, break them up with my hands a little bit, and then put it back in the dryer with some tennis balls, and that'll break everything up and get the bag really lofty. So if you got a bag that's 2-3 years old, you've got more than that 30 days in the field in it, then I would highly suggest washing it, because you're going to see the loft really come back quite a bit. It's amazing how much body oil and dirt and grime gets through the sleeping bag into that down. With the DWR down, you don't want to overwash it. Because DWR is just a surface coating, it's going to wash off eventually. So you don't want to overwash it. I wouldn't wash it after every trip. It's just 30 days. And that could be, this year between the 3 caribou, moose, and mountain goat, we're going to have 30 days in the field. Start with a fresh quilt at the beginning of it. By the end of it, I need to wash it. But 30 days to the next guy could be 5-6 years of hunting, 1 week long trips. It's going to take a while to get that many days. So that's just a general rule what I found, just a rough recommendation. And it obviously depends on what type of shelter you're using, how exposed to dirt is the sleeping bag, where you're hunting, dusty conditions, wet conditions, dry conditions, things like that. One other area besides R value of your pad and besides the rating of your sleeping bag or quilt is other areas to stay warm. One, sleep in your clothes. So I can take this Alsec 22, if I'm sleeping in my long johns, my puffy pants, and my puffy jacket, I've had nights in the single digits, 4 or 5 degrees for the low temp at night, and I've slept incredibly warm in this. So you can really take a sleeping bag or quilt and bring it much lower than its rated temperature by sleeping in some of the clothes that you brought with you on a backcountry hunt. And just like everything, the more versatility we can have, the better. I actually intend this year, I'm going to take this lighter Enlightened equipment quilt up there, and I've got some lightweight puffy pants. So if I do get a really cold night, I've got that option to pair those two together, but I've also got the versatility of having those puffy pants with me. So when we're sitting there glassing and it's kind of a cold morning or cold evening, I'm warm and comfortable, and I can sit there longer and glass longer. Something I'm going to try this year. I've been doing that technique for really cold temperatures, but I've erred on not packing puffy pants and just taking this Alsec 22 when it's in that like 20 to 30 degree range. Another thing that's not super well known is how much your shelter choice will dictate the warmth of how you're sleeping, basically. So I did this test. This was 10 years ago plus. Over the course of a couple of years, I had, at the time I had a Suunto watch, so it would tell the temperature. And so when I go to bed at night, I'd put the watch next to me on the ground in the tent and wake up in the morning and see what temperature it would say. Say it would be 30 degrees. So then I'd just take the watch, stick it outside the vestibule, sit up, make my coffee in there, hang out, let the watch get the actual air temperature. And I saw anywhere on the shelter choice between like a 7 and a 12 degree difference of the internal temperature of the tent and then the temperature out there on certain shelters. There's other shelters, if you go to, we're going to do the tent version of this video here in a little bit, going through all the pros and cons of different tent choices, shelter choices. In that video, I'll go through certain features that make one tent warmer than another and what I'm looking for in a late season tent to try to keep myself warm. And then another aspect on top of that, my favorite way to sleep as far as shelter is a bivy sack and tarp. In the bivy sack, I've got one right here. This is this is Katabatic's bivy sack. I believe it's called the Rincon. And they add quite a bit of warmth as well to your shelter. There's a lot of mesh here. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a lot of mesh, which is designed to reduce condensation and build up on your sleeping bag, but also just having the sides and toe where it's a solid fabric here really adds a lot of warmth. I'd say between 5 and 10 degrees. So again, it's like the pairing of this 22-degree quilt with a bivy sack with sleeping in my puffy pants, I can comfortably get down to 0 degrees. I don't think there's any reason why you need a 0-degree sleeping bag if you have all the right stuff, good R value, good insulation layers that you can sleep in. Bivy sack helps, right shelter choice. So something to be aware of in your sleeping decisions when you're buying quilts and sleeping bags and bivy sacks and tents. One other critical aspect for me is a pillow. I started, for years and years, I would just take my puffy jacket or whatever I could, kind of try to roll it up and make a pillow out of it. And then I found, especially as much as I like to sleep on my side, that I was getting a lot of shoulder pressure. I'd wake up with my neck kind of stiff. And I found that just the extra couple ounces of packing a pillow is definitely worth its weight. I sleep a lot better. I've had a couple different Sea to Summit pillows. This has kind of been my go-to one. It weighs maybe 2.5 ounces. So lightweight, but again, sleep is just much, much better with it. Another note on sleeping is don't overlook sleeping pills. I constantly take either like a Aleve PM or a Tylenol PM. You can do melatonin gummies. There's a lot of options out there to help you sleep. I think it's a pretty common theme that guys aren't getting great sleep out there in the backcountry. So definitely explore some of the vitamins and medications you can help to sleep better. I certainly have to use them myself because even with getting everything as dialed in as I possibly can, sleep is still hard to come by while I'm out there. And it's certainly, you can get by with a day or a night or two of crappy sleep, but you know, day 5, day 6, day 7, as a hunt drags on, that's really gonna kind of bring you down. And the most important thing is to get good sleep so you've got energy to be able to hunt hard the next day. One last thing, storage. My favorite, you never wanna store any of your down stuff really compressed. Don't throw it in the stuff sack, throw it in the closet. Even when I'm packing for a hunt, for the caribou hunt, I'm gonna start packing up here soon. And maybe years past, 15 years ago, I would just stuff everything in my backpack, have it ready, and you know, I wasn't leaving for 5 or 6 days. Now I'm very aware of not over compressing the down, so I'll put everything in a tote, and then the day of the trip, do that final kind of put into the backpack. And then as far as storage goes, the best thing I found is actually just underneath the bed. So I've got my sleeping bags and quilts somewhere underneath the bed in my bedroom, and then in our guest bedroom, I've got them laid out underneath there. You can lay them out flat, kind of out of sight, out of mind until you need them for your next hunting trip. Okay, we're going to just show you real quick how the pad attachment straps work with the Katabatic quilt, and then also this is my Enlightened Equipment quilt. I'm going to show you a custom thing I did with those straps as well as kind of how I use the bivy sack and some options there. But really simple on the Katabatic straps. So you got your quilt, and then it's going to come with 2 different straps with just a simple adjuster. And so you're going to want to lay your quilt on. And this is one of the cool things about quilts versus a sleeping bag is kind of once you attach your quilt to the pad, you're not falling off of it all night long. I think it's some often overlooked really huge benefit of the quilt system is that you're kind of attached to the pad and you're not waking up off the side of it or down off the bottom of it. You get pretty well attached. So you're going to, I'm just going to line up the foot with the foot, and then you've got, here's your 2 plastic attachments. So I need one here and one here. Real simple to do. So I'll take that, slide it down, and then you just simply snug it up. And same thing on that one. And then you're just going to take these clips and simply pop them on. And they do have, if it's nice and warm and you want that sliding back and forth a little bit, you just leave it on the first setting, and it does have a second setting you can pop it into, and then it really locks that into place. And that's it. You just connect both sides. And that's all it takes to attach your quilt to it. And then you can just see how basically you're laying there, and that's wrapping around on the underside of your body. You get no drafts there. And just how that works. When it's real cold, you'll take this and snap it on the back side of your head, and then you got a drawstring here to cinch that up around your neck. And then I'm just wearing a beanie or flipping my hood up to keep my head warm. And it works really well. And when it's hot, you don't attach anything, you leave it open, it just acts like a blanket. On the bivy sack side, so this is something I did. So I talked about using Aqua Seal earlier. I took the Enlightened equipment straps, I can get that off, that came with it, and I cut them off and then just simply Aqua Sealed them right to the back side of my sleeping pad. Obviously, once you do this, you're not, it might void the warranty. I don't know, or if you wanted to sell it down the road, make it tougher. But I basically took the straps and just permanently attached them to the pad, and it works really well. It's on elastic cord, so as you roll over throughout the night, it's not really an issue. Light equipment has two, so I got two on this side and two on that side. And then there's just one less thing I don't have to remember. They're just permanently attached to the pad, so that's pretty cool. Then this is just an example of the bivy sack setup. As I talked about earlier, having all that coverage adds quite a bit of warmth to your sleep system. I think it adds about, I don't know, say 5 to 10 degrees to where, if this is a 30-degree quilt, then it's like 25 with the bivy sack, just because it's holding more of that heat in. And then the cool thing that I like to do, we did this last year, packing out Mark's Bowl. This quilt has a attachment here, and so I'll take my trekking poles with the wiser sticks attached, kind of run them out. And this only works if the ground's soft enough to get them into. But simply just run it here above the head, jam one side in, jam the other side in, and then just take this cord and run it over the top like that. And it's got a cinch on it if you want to adjust it, but it just helps keep the mesh off your head if you kind of have it like that. And then as you're sleeping throughout the night, that mesh is staying off your face. So just another little feature trick we'll do. Actually, Tyler Boschma was the first guy to do this on an elk hunt we were on. I was like, man, that's brilliant. So been doing it ever since. Hopefully some of these tips help you guys on your next hunt. For more information, check us out at theexperienceproject.com.